Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial, and today, in honor of the 4th of July, we are going to talk about whether or not the battleship could survive the movie Independence Day. Independence Day was one of my favorite movies growing up. And just a disclaimer here at the beginning, before we get too far into it, this video is monetized to support the museum, so we are not going to be showing any of the footage from the movie Independence Day. So, if you have not seen the movie yet, go over and watch it. It's been out for like 2 decades. What's going on here? Also, there will be spoilers for the movie Independence Day in this video. So again, if you haven't watched it yet, pause the video, go watch it, come back in 2 hours. I'll talk to you then. You done? Okay. So, in the movie, these city-sized alien spaceships, about 24 of them, come to Earth and descend over all the major capitals all at once. Jeff Goldblum is on Earth. He's a notorious Earth dweller, and he hears a radio signal that these ships are putting out, and he is the first person to figure out that the radio signal is actually counting down, and intuits that means that the aliens are going to blow up the planet when the timer counts down. He has an ex-wife who's like chief of staff at the White House or something like that, so he heads over there to tell them the issue. They get the president, who's an ex-fighter pilot, onto Air Force One and get him out of there just in time for the aliens to blow up the White House and all of DC. Also, all of LA gets blown up too. Will Smith is just trying to celebrate the 4th of July. He is a Marine Corps fighter pilot who gets recalled, and he ends up dogfighting these alien spaceships. So not only do these big city-sized spaceships have lasers that can destroy an entire city, when we launch a bunch of F-18s at them, they launch a bunch of smaller spaceships that have shields and frickin' laser beams. And it turns out F-18 Hornets are great maneuverable fighters, but a Sidewinder cannot punch through an alien missile, so pretty much all of the aircraft we commit get shot down, and Will Smith is like the only person who's able to take down an alien spaceship, and then he welcomes them to Earth. At that point, everybody ends up in Area 51, where we have a captured alien spaceship, and we start to figure out their technology. Jeff Goldblum realizes that we can use a computer virus to sabotage the alien ships, take down their shields so that we can then shoot them down. And the president makes a really great speech, and then they find out they don't have enough fighter pilots, so him and some guys from an RV and some other folks all jump into fighter planes and go and shoot down the alien spaceships, and we save Earth. And then unfortunately they made a sequel, and that wasn't as good. Could Battleship New Jersey have survived the alien attack? The aliens managed to destroy, there's like 24 alien ships, if I remember correctly, and they each managed to destroy 2 cities and then position themselves over a 3rd city when humanity finally figures out how to defeat them. In this disaster porn movie, we see a number of cities destroyed, and the novelization of the movie gives you a full list of all of them that are destroyed. And good news, Bremerton, Washington is not destroyed, so Battleship New Jersey survives the movie Independence Day. The movie takes place in 1997, the same year that it is released. In 1997, all of the Iowa-class battleships are decommissioned. The ones that are in mothballs in Norfolk, which I believe is Iowa and Wisconsin at this time, are destroyed when that city is destroyed. There's no way an Iowa-class battleship, especially an unmanned one, can survive one of these city-destroying lasers. However, New Jersey and Missouri are in Bremerton, Washington, and Bremerton is middle of nowhere enough that neither Bremerton nor Seattle are targeted by these ships. And so they survive. End of story. But for the fun part, would these ships, if they were fully active, clearly the U.S. military is throwing everything they can against these alien spaceships. Since we see Navy and Marine Corps aircraft fighting, we can assume both the land-based assets and also the carrier battle group's assets are thrown against them. We see that there are Air Force aircraft like F-16s and F-15s involved as well. We see B-2 bombers dropping nuclear warheads on these alien city ships. So we know that the U.S. military is throwing out basically every weapon in the arsenal, even though the movie tends to focus on fighter pilots and the air war. But we have no reason to doubt that if the Iowa-class battleships were in service, they would have been used. One of the great things about warships is that there are mobile weapons platforms. These alien ships are able to slowly move and position themselves over cities and major military bases, like one targets Roswell, New Mexico. But we get no information about them targeting at-sea warships. So ships like the Nimitz-class aircraft carriers are able to sail underway as a floating airfield that can potentially move fast enough to not be destroyed by these cities-killing ships. Likewise, Battleship New Jersey can also keep up with the carrier battle group. And that is one of the triad of nuclear deterrence. Nuclear submarines are able to move with missiles. So while enemies can target our military bases, they can't necessarily target a stealthy submarine. So it makes sense that movable platforms like this are survivable platforms. Now, it's worth keeping in mind that only 1/3 of our military assets are actively deployed at any given time. So 1/3 are forward deployed, 1/3 are back at home training and getting ready to forward deploy. The other third is undergoing maintenance and completely not available. So at this time, we've got about 15 aircraft carriers, so only 5 of them are forward deployed. The other 10 are likely destroyed in cities. Because we only had 4 battleships, it tended to be 2 were deployed and 2 were in port at any given time. There was Missouri and New Jersey in the Pacific and Iowa and Wisconsin in the Atlantic. We've got no reason to believe that if these ships had served into 1997 to fight aliens, that they wouldn't have continued to use them the same way they had been. So, if New Jersey is the one that's forward deployed somewhere in the Pacific, she survives. If she is the one that is in port in Long Beach undergoing maintenance, she gets destroyed in the first wave when LA gets blown up. So, either way you look at it, one battleship on each coast likely survives the initial alien assaults and is available a couple of days later. I think it's 2 days later. I think they're destroying 1 city a day. Is available 2 days later on the 4th of July for the major counterattack. When it comes to the major attack when the alien shields are down, the battleship can do tremendous damage to these ships. They can elevate the guns to 45 degrees, which means they might even be able to put a shell into the giant laser on the bottom, which is how you end up destroying these ships. You could put a lot of shells into a city-sized ship without taking it down, even these big 16-inch shells. The battleships could have also carried nuclear warheads, but, interestingly enough, we try nuclear warheads on them and they don't seem to work when they're shielded, and then they never try to nuke them again, possibly because they're all over population centers and you don't want to destroy that city. So, even though the battleships are nuclear capable, they can carry nuclear Tomahawk cruise missiles, likely would not have been used. Harpoon and Tomahawk cruise missiles likely would not be able to target the missile specifically. The 5-inch guns probably would have the best chance of taking down this ship. The Ford Mark 1 able computers that aim them are able to plot a 3-dimensional firing solution, So this ship in the air, and you're trying to hit specifically the big laser on the bottom, you can get the battleship under it, elevate the 5-inch guns all the way up to positive 85 degrees, and plot a firing solution with their analog computers to drop a shell in there. And in theory, a 55-pound 5-inch projectile is roughly the same size as the air-to-air missiles that the F-18s are firing into these lasers. So it should be able to work. Believe it or not, the 16-inch guns during World War II did have AA range tables plotted for them. Basically, the Navy plotted what angles of elevation the 16-inch guns would need to be used as anti-aircraft guns. Maximum angle is 45 degrees, so they can only be used for extreme long range. But there is a way to program the time delay fuse in a 16-inch shell to airburst. I'm not entirely sure how that worked, and I've got no evidence that the U.S. Navy ever actually trained their ships to do it. But the range tables do exist, and in theory it's possible. I suspect you would cross-connect a 16-inch gun with the 5-inch gun's director and computer, which can elevate and do three-dimensional plotting, unlike the Mark 38 director and the Mark 8 computer for the 16-inch guns. So, if the battleship survives, she can, in theory, destroy one of these city ships once the shields are down. The problem is, the city ship isn't going to wait for the battleship to come up and attack. We have to assume that the city ship is within probably 10 or 15 miles of the coast for the battleship to be able to engage it, and that they do not engage us with their aircraft. The Iowa-class battleships in the 1980s are most deficient in their anti-aircraft capabilities. I'm sitting here in the Combat Engagement Center at the Air Traffic Control Station, which is on the extreme starboard outboard bulkhead of the room. So from here, enlisted sailors can use the air search radars and the identification friend or foe systems to tell what types of aircraft they are, whether they're friendly or not, and then get on the radio and vector these aircraft to help in our anti-aircraft defense, or to send against targets that we've identified. The battleship has very, very little indigenous anti-aircraft capability in the 1980s. The Phalanx close-in weapon system is a last resort weapon, and we could probably shoot down one of the unshielded alien ships. They seem to be no more or less capable than contemporary aircraft, but our Block 0 models have about 15 seconds worth of ammunition. So between the 4 Phalanxes we have, best case scenario, maybe we shoot down a dozen of these spaceships. And there are a tremendous number of them. Other than that, our electronic countermeasures probably don't work against them. And they're not launching radio-directed missiles, so our chaff launchers do nothing against them. We've got no long-range or medium-range anti-air missiles on these ships. The Navy looked at installing them and found that the overpressure from the 16-inch guns firing precluded us from having Sea Sparrow missiles installed. And without vertical launch tubes, we couldn't have SM-2 missiles installed, which were the 2 main types of anti-aircraft missiles of the 80s and 90s. So we have very little indigenous capability. We can vector our own friendly aircraft to come and help us, but if they're defending us, they're not doing much against the spaceship. One thing we can do is put up a moderately decent flak barrage with our 5-inch guns. And these alien spaceships would probably be taken out by VT-fused 5-inch projectiles. So we could defend ourselves a little bit. The real question on how survivable the battleship is what happens when the lasers hit us. Iowa-class battleships have a number of spaced plates that make up the hull of the ship, with any projectile having to pass through 2 or 3 steel plates before it even gets to the armored belt, and then having to punch through a 12-inch belt to get through the armored part of the ship into the citadel. we get no real good information on whether these lasers are armor piercing. We see them shoot down aircraft. Aircraft aren't really armored, so we don't really know if they hit a battleship, if they could go through. It does not look like the sort of laser that just keeps melting through something and goes in one side and out the other. The big lasers that destroy cities definitely do that, but the small ones that the ships are firing don't seem to. And so it is likely that these missiles would impact our 1.5-inch thick main deck or our 1.5-inch thick shell plating along the sides of the ship, punch holes in that, but not be able to punch through to the vital part of the ship and impact our fighting capability. If that is the case, then the battleship is extremely survivable in this situation. Critical command and control facilities, radio communications, and radar can be knocked out, but the ship's ability to float should not be affected, nor should any of these hits be able to set off a huge detonation that would destroy the ship. So, of the 4 Iowa-class battleships, it is likely 2 will survive the initial assault, and I'd give them a 50-50 chance. I think that one of the 4 could probably survive the final battle. Maybe they all die in defense of the planet. We certainly don't see any in Independence Day 2, but nothing really lost there. So, what do you think? Can an Iowa-class battleship survive an alien attack like that? And by the way, this is the only alien attack movie that I'm going to consider putting battleships against. Don't even mention that other movie. I haven't even watched it. I never plan on it. What are some capabilities of the ship that you think would have done well against the aliens? Such as our analog technology. We can't be affected by a virus the way the alien stuff is. What are some aspects of the ship that would not fare well? I brought up our inability to protect ourselves against aircraft, particularly massed swarm aircraft attacks. We might be able to take out 1 or 2, but against the huge numbers they're throwing at us, we can't outrun them, we can't shoot them all down. It doesn't bode well for us. But what are some other things that you think are working in our favor or against us, besides the fact that we were all in mothballs by then? Let us know in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description if you'd like to continue donating to support the museum. Thanks for watching.